The sun had not yet risen over the jagged peaks of eastern Afghanistan, but Sergeant Emily Carter was already awake. The chill of the pre-dawn mountain air cut through the thin layers of her uniform, seeping to her bones, but it did nothing to slow the rhythm of her preparation. She crouched in the shadow of a rock outcrop, inspecting her sniper rifle with meticulous care. The Barrett M82A1 sat before her, an extension of her own body, polished and ready. Each component was checked, every screw and spring tested. Emily's hands moved methodically, almost ritualistically, as if by touching her rifle, she could control the chaos that was about to unfold. Around her, the ranger team stirred. The sound of zippers and boots on gravel echoed quietly through the valley, blending with the occasional distant cry of a goat or the flutter of birds fleeing the rocky terrain. They had been briefed extensively the previous night. Reconnaissance mission, mountainous terrain, potential enemy contact. Intelligence had suggested a small insurgent cell, but Emily's instincts warned her that the mountains rarely held only what appeared on paper. She had learned the hard way that numbers and reports could be meaningless. It was what wasn't reported that often determined survival. The Rangers, a team of highly trained soldiers, were veterans of countless missions, but Emily noticed subtle tension in their movements. The way Sergeant Miller, the team leader, repeatedly checked the maps, the nervous glance of Corporal Jensen toward the ridges, the tightening of grips on weapons. Emily understood them. She had been in that position countless times before. She had spent years honing her skills, enduring rigorous sniper training and proving herself in a field that was overwhelmingly male-dominated. In boot camp, instructors had doubted her stamina. Fellow trainees had whispered that a woman could never match the precision, patience, and nerve required of a sniper. Emily had responded with silence and results. Her record spoke louder than their skepticism. She took a deep breath, the cold air filling her lungs, and visualized the mission ahead. Reconnaissance in mountainous terrain demanded patience. One misstep, one miscalculation, could expose the team to ambush. Emily's mind ran through the checklist. Wind speed, 12 knots from the northeast. Temperature, 34 degrees. Distance to the first high ridge, 800 meters. The valley below was cloaked in darkness, shadowy formations moving against the rocky backdrop. It was serene, deceptive in its stillness, the calm before the storm. The Rangers moved in silence, their boots making almost no sound on the loose gravel. Emily, carrying her sniper rifle carefully slung across her back, moved with the precision of a seasoned predator. Every ridge, every outcropping, every shadow was a potential threat. The team split as planned, 2 pairs moving ahead to scout, while Emily and Jensen climbed a secondary ridge to provide overwatch. The climb was steep, the rocks unforgiving, but Emily was in her element. Her legs burned, her muscles strained, but she focused only on reaching a vantage point that would give her the widest field of vision and maximum tactical advantage. Halfway up, Emily paused and scanned the valley. The first rays of sunlight began to touch the peaks, casting long shadows that made the terrain even more deceptive. Small trails snaked through the rocks, some human-made, some carved by animals, and she traced them with her eyes, mentally noting potential choke points and danger zones. Then, movement. A faint figure darting between rocks, almost blending with the shadows. Emily narrowed her eyes through her scope. It was a child, no older than 10, running from a distant ridge. The boy's movements were too hurried, too careful, clearly frightened. Emily's stomach twisted. War had taught her that children were often both witnesses and victims, and this valley would not forgive the unprepared. She adjusted her breathing, telling herself to stay focused. She could not afford to hesitate. The safety of the team rested on precision, timing, and awareness. The child vanished behind a rock as Emily scanned further. That's when the first gunfire shattered the quiet. A sharp staccato rhythm echoed through the valley. Small arms fire from multiple directions. Rocks kicked up dust as bullets ricocheted, splintering into fragments. The quiet reconnaissance mission had turned into chaos in an instant. The Rangers dove for cover instinctively, shouting warnings to each other. Captain Miller barked orders despite a grazing wound across his shoulder, trying to organize his men amidst the sudden ambush. Emily's heart rate spiked, not from fear, but from adrenaline and focus. She sprinted toward a higher ridge, taking advantage of the terrain's natural cover. Her rifle was ready, scope adjusted to the angle of the valley below. Through her lens, the enemy was coming into view. Men armed with AK-47s and RPGs, their movements coordinated and deadly. Emily's pulse steadied. This was what she had trained for. Months of preparation, years of discipline, and every ounce of patience she had learned came into play. Each step she took was calculated, each breath measured. From her perch, Emily had a full view of the battlefield. The valley below was chaotic, the Rangers pinned down, their movements restricted. The insurgents, numbering far more than initial intelligence had suggested, were moving strategically, attempting to encircle the team. Emily knew that if the team stayed in the open, they would be overrun within minutes. She positioned herself behind a jagged boulder, adjusted the scope, and began scanning for high-value targets, machine gunners, snipers, and anyone threatening her team's safety. The wind whipped across the ridge, tugging at her uniform and rifling her hair. Emily took note of it, calculating how it would affect the trajectory of her bullets. Every shot had to count. Every hesitation could cost lives. Corporal Jensen, beside her, whispered enemy movements into her ear, providing critical information. The two worked in perfect coordination, a team built on trust, communication, and understanding, unspoken yet absolute. Minutes stretched like hours. Emily's hands, steady despite fatigue, adjusted the rifle's elevation, accounting for distance, wind, and gravity. She thought of home, Montana, her father teaching her to hunt, the long hours of practice that no one had believed she could endure. Every lesson, every discipline, every ounce of patience had led to this moment. She exhaled slowly, heart synchronized with the rhythm of the valley, every muscle and nerve tuned to the mission. Then the moment came. A high-value target emerged from cover, a machine gunner positioned to fire at the Rangers below. Emily's finger gently squeezed the trigger. A single shot, precise, controlled, and final. The enemy fell silently into the valley dust, and for a brief moment, the chaos below paused, giving the Rangers a chance to regroup. Emily's eyes scanned again, unyielding, unwavering. The battle was just beginning, but she was ready. The sniper's war had begun, and the valley would soon learn that precision, courage, and determination could turn the tide even against overwhelming odds. The ambush struck like a thunderclap. One moment, the valley was quiet, shrouded in morning mist, and the next, the air was filled with a deafening roar of gunfire. Bullets whistled past the Rangers, ricocheting off rocks and sending dust and gravel into the air. Explosions from RPGs punctuated the chaos, sending shockwaves through the narrow valley. Shouts, screams, and the sharp commands of Captain Miller created a chaotic symphony of survival. The Rangers dove behind boulders, instinctively seeking cover from a coordinated enemy far larger than intelligence had predicted. Emily's heart raced, but her mind was clear. She had trained for this. She vaulted onto a higher ridge, rifle in hand, seeking a vantage point. From above, she could see the full scope of the battlefield. The insurgents, at least 50 strong, were moving strategically, aiming to encircle the Rangers. Their knowledge of the terrain was formidable. They had set up ambush points, and every ridge seemed to conceal hidden shooters. Emily adjusted her position, careful not to expose herself, while simultaneously gathering critical intelligence. Every movement below, every flash of weapon fire, every footstep was data to be processed. Captain Miller's voice rose above the chaos, laced with urgency. Hold position. Keep your heads down. Don't let them close in. His shoulder was bleeding from a grazing bullet, yet his authority remained unshaken. The Rangers, though well-trained, were outnumbered and pinned. Corporal Jensen scrambled beside Emily, relaying enemy positions through their headset. Emily's eyes scanned the valley, her scope catching glints of metal and flashes of movement. She counted the enemy positions, machine gun nests, snipers, and RPG teams. Her pulse slowed, replaced by the cold clarity of calculation. Emily's training kicked in like a well-oiled machine. Years of patience, discipline, and practice in Montana's hunting grounds and military sniper courses converged at this precise moment. She focused on the fundamentals: wind direction, distance, bullet drop, target priority. The first high-value target emerged, a machine gunner positioned at a rocky outcrop 900 meters away. Her breath slowed. One shot, one bullet, could buy her team precious minutes. She steadied her rifle, aligning the crosshairs, and pulled the trigger. The report echoed through the valley. The enemy collapsed, and for a fleeting moment, a shred of hope flickered. But the insurgents were quick to react. They moved like shadows across the rocks, attempting to flank the Rangers' position. Emily recalculated rapidly, estimating their speed, distance, and angle. Corporal Jensen provided constant updates, his voice barely audible over the din. Each shot Emily fired disrupted the enemy's rhythm, slowing their advance. The Rangers began to move more strategically, taking advantage of the openings Emily's precision provided. Yet the valley remained deadly, a trap lined with unseen threats. Every second mattered. Every heartbeat could be the difference between life and death. Emily's mind momentarily flashed back to boot camp, the grueling early mornings, the nights spent perfecting her aim in freezing wind. Fellow trainees had doubted her, instructors had questioned her stamina, but she had endured. The valley demanded the same endurance now. One by one, she identified targets. A sniper attempting to pick off Captain Miller, a fighter readying an RPG, and another moving to cut off the team's retreat. Each shot was deliberate, calculated, a testament to skill forged through relentless training. Below, the Rangers fought valiantly, returning fire, ducking behind cover, and coordinating movements under extreme pressure. Captain Miller, despite his injury, moved among his men, encouraging them, directing fire, and keeping morale intact. The sight of Emily taking precise shots from above provided a psychological boost. They knew they were not alone, that someone was watching over them with lethal precision. The insurgents, on the other hand, became cautious, realizing that an unseen sniper was systematically eliminating their threats. Fear and confusion crept into their ranks. As the minutes stretched, Emily found herself calculating multiple variables simultaneously. Distance, wind, the enemy's movement patterns, her own breathing, and the recoil of her rifle. The cold mountain air stung her lungs, and her hands ached from the weight of the Barrett, but she was relentless. Each shot was a calculated gamble, and each successful hit shifted the battle slightly in favor of the Rangers. Her focus was absolute. Distraction could mean disaster, but clarity brought survival. Then came a critical moment. Captain Miller's position was under heavy fire from an RPG team hidden in a rocky crevice. If they fired, the Rangers could be annihilated. Emily scanned quickly, calculating the 1,200-meter shot, factoring in wind, elevation, and gravity. She exhaled slowly, tightened her grip, and squeezed the trigger. The bullet struck perfectly, neutralizing the RPG threat seconds before disaster could strike. Below, The Rangers cheered softly, realizing that Emily had just saved their lives. The insurgents regrouped, their numbers still overwhelming. Emily knew she could not stop. She had to maintain pressure, eliminate key threats, and protect her team until reinforcements arrived. Sweat ran down her brow, dust coated her uniform, and every muscle screamed in protest, but she remained steady. Her mind was a machine, processing data, prioritizing targets, and coordinating with Jensen. The valley had become a chessboard, and Emily was calculating every move with lethal precision. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. Emily fired again and again, picking off high-value targets, each shot saving lives below. She observed patterns, enemy soldiers communicating, repositioning, and attempting to outflank the Rangers. She adapted instantly, calculating angles and bullet drop, anticipating their next move. Below, her team gained small victories, pushing back pockets of insurgents, but always under constant threat. Emily's sniper work became the backbone of their survival. Without her, the Rangers would have been trapped, overwhelmed, and outnumbered. By midday, a valley had become a battlefield of attrition. Dust hung in the air, mingling with smoke from explosions. Emily's position on the ridge had become both a sanctuary and a target. Enemy snipers had begun searching for her, knowing that eliminating her would turn the tide in their favor. Emily adjusted her position, moving silently among rocks, her rifle ready. She continued picking targets with unerring precision. Her eyes, scanning through the scope, missed nothing. The smallest movement, the slightest flash of metal, the ripple of fabric against rock. Through it all, Emily's mind remained calm. She thought of her father, teaching her patience and focus in the forests of Montana. She remembered the hunts, the countless hours of practice, the long nights of training. All of it had led to this moment, a crucible of skill, courage, and discipline. The Rangers below relied on her, and she would not fail. She was not just a sniper. She was the lifeline of the team, the silent guardian watching over them as chaos raged below. As the sun climbed higher, Emily's shots began turning the tide. The enemy, realizing the futility of frontal attacks against a precision sniper, slowed their movements, regrouped, and became cautious. Each of Emily's bullets bought precious seconds, each second allowing the Rangers to regain composure and maneuver strategically. The team moved like a single organism, coordinated and protected by her unseen hand. Emily's resolve never wavered. The valley, once a trap, now offered hope. Hope rooted in skill, precision, and courage. The battle was far from over, but the Rangers were no longer at the mercy of the enemy. Emily had demonstrated the true power of a sniper in a critical situation. Every shot mattered. Every life mattered. And as the afternoon sun climbed, she prepared for the next phase, knowing that victory demanded not only courage, but unrelenting focus. In the heart of the valley, under impossible odds, Sergeant Emily Carter had already begun turning the tide. The valley's calm was gone, replaced by a cacophony of gunfire, shouted commands, and explosions. The Rangers had been pinned down for over an hour, the enemy's numbers far greater than intelligence had predicted. 50 insurgents moved like shadows across the rocks, attempting to encircle Captain Miller's team. Emily Carter crouched behind a jagged boulder, Barrett M82A1 in hand, eyes scanning every ridge, every shadow, every potential threat. The weight of responsibility pressed on her shoulders, yet her focus never wavered. Her team's survival depended on her precision and quick judgment. Captain Miller, grim-faced and bloodied from a grazing bullet to his shoulder, barked orders as the men scrambled for cover. Hold your positions. Stay low. Return fire only when you have a clear shot. His voice was steady, though his hand trembled slightly as he aimed at a distant rock outcrop. Below him, soldiers hugged the earth, taking cover behind boulders, rocks, and the occasional patch of shrub. Some had minor wounds. Others were simply exhausted and terrified. The enemy had tactical advantage, using the terrain expertly, but Emily's eyes cut through the chaos, calculating every movement. Emily's pulse was steady. She had climbed to a higher ridge to gain an overwatch position. From this vantage point, she could see the full scope of the battlefield. Every insurgent position, every approach path, every hidden rock or ridge that could conceal a shooter, she noted them all. She adjusted her scope, calculated the angle, the wind, the distance. Her training had prepared her for this exact scenario. Outnumbered, surrounded, yet with a clear line of sight, the sniper could turn the tide. The first high-priority target emerged, an insurgent sniper attempting to take out Corporal Jensen, who was relaying enemy movements and updating positions via radio. Emily exhaled slowly, aligning the crosshairs. One smooth squeeze of the trigger, and the enemy fell silently into the rocky dust. Jensen barely had time to acknowledge her kill before another insurgent raised an AK-47, aiming for Captain Miller. Emily recalculated. Wind 14 knots, elevation angle, distance 1,050 meters. The bullet left her barrel with deadly accuracy. The insurgent collapsed. The enemy, realizing they were facing a highly skilled sniper, became cautious. They tried to flank the Rangers from multiple sides, yet Emily anticipated every move. Her scope caught the glint of metal, the flash of movement, as she neutralized threats one by one. A machine gun nest on the left ridge was eliminated, saving the lives of 4 Rangers pinned beneath its deadly fire. Each shot brought hope and a tactical advantage. Below, the team began to move more aggressively, using the cover that Emily's shots had created to inch closer to safer positions. Captain Miller's voice cut through the noise. "Emily, focus on the RPG team. They're about to strike." Emily adjusted her scope and observed the 3 men preparing to fire an RPG toward the Rangers' position. She knew that one shot could prevent catastrophic loss. Steadying her breath, she calculated the trajectory, accounting for the uphill angle and wind gusts. The bullet left her barrel with perfect precision. Seconds later, one insurgent fell backward, another dropped his weapon, and the last hesitated, unsure whether to retreat or continue. The RPG threat was neutralized. Time stretched as minutes became hours. Emily's shoulder ached from the rifle's recoil, and dust coated her uniform, yet she continued, relentless. Her mind was a machine, processing wind, distance, enemy movements, and her own positioning simultaneously. Her eyes scanned the valley, never resting, every movement below a potential threat. Each shot was deliberate, controlled, and deadly. The enemy's attempt to encircle the Rangers faltered under her accurate and continuous sniper fire. The impossible odds were slowly beginning to shift. Below, the Rangers were starting to regain control. Using the openings Emily created, soldiers moved from cover to cover, reclaiming ground bit by bit. Corporal Jensen relayed enemy movements with greater clarity, his trust in Emily's skill unwavering. Captain Miller, despite his injuries, coordinated fire and movement. He glanced up at Emily's position, awe and gratitude in his eyes. He had trained countless snipers in his career, but the precision, composure, and calm Emily displayed under fire was extraordinary. The team began to believe that survival was possible, even surrounded by overwhelming enemy numbers. Emily allowed herself a brief flashback to Montana, where she had learned patience, focus, and marksmanship. Hunting in freezing weather, days spent lying prone for hours, learning to anticipate movements and read the wind. Every lesson now translated into life-saving precision. She exhaled slowly, letting her experience and instincts guide her. Each shot was more than a bullet. It was a lifeline, a shield, a tactical advantage, and a message to the enemy. They were not in control here. The enemy attempted to regroup, frustrated and confused by their unseen adversary. Emily observed their patterns and adapted. One insurgent attempted to use the smoke of a small explosion to sneak closer to the Rangers. Emily tracked him, measured the distance, and fired. The insurgent fell silently. Another, aiming for a vulnerable flank, was quickly neutralized. The valley, once a trap, was slowly turning into a battlefield under her command. Every shot saved lives, and every minute bought the Rangers precious time to maneuver. Then came the critical moment. Captain Miller was pinned under heavy fire from an insurgent, SQUAD, attempting to advance on their position. Bullets pocked the ground around him as he crawled toward cover, shouting orders to maintain coordination. Emily's scope tracked the movement of the advancing squad, 5 men armed with AKs, moving with lethal intent. She calculated the 1,200-meter shot, taking into account wind, gravity, and the movement of her targets. Time seemed to slow. One careful squeeze, and disaster could be averted. The bullet left her barrel, traveling across the valley in a deadly arc. The insurgent squad was decimated before they could fire. Captain Miller made it safely to cover, visibly relieved and grateful. The Rangers cheered quietly, realizing that Emily's skill had saved their lives yet again. Her calm precision, unshaken focus, and ability to calculate under immense pressure had turned the tide of what seemed like an impossible situation. Despite the temporary relief, Emily knew the fight was far from over. The insurgents were still numerous, their positions scattered, and their intentions deadly. Her team relied on her, and she would not falter. She repositioned herself slightly, keeping the enemy guessing, adjusting for distance, wind, and the sun's shifting glare. Below, the Rangers began to move strategically, reclaiming ground while Emily's shots provided cover and eliminated threats. The rhythm of sniper fire became the heartbeat of their survival. As the sun climbed higher, Emily's calm focus contrasted with the chaos below. Sweat ran down her forehead, dust clung to her uniform, and the weight of the rifle pulled at her arms, but she remained unwavering. Every shot mattered, every breath counted, and every decision could determine life or death. The Rangers, inspired by her skill, coordinated movements with renewed confidence. They were no longer completely at the mercy of the enemy. They had a guardian watching over them with lethal precision. The battle in the valley had reached a precarious balance. The enemy, frustrated by losses and the inability to locate the sniper, hesitated. Emily used every ounce of skill and focus to track, calculate, and eliminate threats while maintaining a vantage point that kept her unseen. She had become the invisible shield protecting her team, the unseen force that ensured they could survive against impossible odds. Her calm, methodical approach to combat had turned what could have been a massacre into a fight with a chance of survival. As the afternoon approached, Emily's presence above the battlefield was the difference between life and death. She had already neutralized dozens of high-value targets, bought precious time for her team, and prevented catastrophic injuries. Her team, though battered and exhausted, began to move strategically, reclaiming ground under her cover. The sniper's war had just begun, and Emily was determined to see it through. In the heart of the valley, with enemy forces pressing from every side, Sergeant Emily Carter was not just surviving, she was controlling the battle, one precise shot at a time. The valley had become a chaotic theater of fire and shadows. Dust rose in swirling clouds, mingling with smoke from small explosions, creating a surreal haze that obscured vision. Bullets ricocheted off jagged rocks and boulders, the sharp staccato punctuated by occasional distant shouts of the insurgents. Below, the Rangers moved cautiously, pinned down yet determined to hold their positions. Emily Carter, perched atop a rocky ridge, scanned the battlefield through the scope of her Barrett M82A1. Her breath was steady. Her hands calm and her eyes narrowed, analyzed every movement with precision. From her vantage point, Emily could see the entire battlefield unfold like a tactical map. Enemy insurgents moved in squads, attempting to outflank the Rangers while searching for her position. Each step, each pause, each twitch of fabric or glint of metal revealed a threat she immediately accounted for. Emily adjusted her calculations. Wind speed, distance, bullet drop, and even the subtle shift of the morning sun before taking each shot. Every bullet she fired had a purpose. A life saved, a threat neutralized, a tactical advantage gained. The first high-priority target appeared, an insurgent manning a heavy machine gun aimed directly at Captain Miller's group. Emily exhaled slowly, steadying her heartbeat. Her training had prepared her for this moment countless times, yet the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. She measured the distance, 1,150 meters. Wind, 14 knots from the northeast. Adjusting for elevation and gravity, she squeezed the trigger. The gunner slumped to the rocky ground, the weapon clattering uselessly beside him. Below, the Rangers took advantage of the opening, moving to safer positions under cover. Another target emerged moments later, a sniper, attempting to locate and eliminate Emily herself. The enemy's eyes scanned the ridgelines, trying to anticipate her position. Emily's focus sharpened. She shifted slightly, using the terrain to conceal her body, and lined up the scope. Another shot rang out, precise and deliberate. The insurgent fell backward, leaving a small cloud of dust in his wake. Emily's movements were fluid, practiced, and invisible. She became a ghost on the ridge, lethal and unseen, a force that the enemy could not predict or counter. The enemy, realizing their initial advantage was slipping, attempted a coordinated push from the left flank. 5 insurgents armed with the K-47s moved quickly, trying to cut off the Rangers' line of retreat. Emily's mind calculated their speed, trajectory, and likely cover points. Her fingers tightened around the trigger. Bullet after bullet struck true, neutralizing 2 before they could fire. A third fell shortly after, screaming in panic. The remaining 2 hesitated, frozen by the realization that they were facing a sniper capable of deadly precision at extraordinary distances. Below, Captain Miller moved his men strategically, encouraging them while remaining partially exposed to cover enemy fire. The Rangers, inspired by Emily's skill, began reclaiming lost ground. Corporal Jensen relayed enemy positions, calling out threats in real time, and Emily responded with surgical accuracy. The rhythm of her shooting, deliberate and unyielding, began to turn the tide. Each life saved allowed the Rangers to breathe, reposition, and counterattack. Slowly but surely, they regained confidence in the midst of overwhelming chaos. Emily's mind flashed briefly to Montana, where she had learned the art of patience and focus. Hunting elk on frost-covered mornings, lying prone for hours while waiting for the perfect shot. Those lessons in stillness, observation, and discipline translated seamlessly to the battlefield. Her fingers twitched slightly on the trigger, but her breathing was controlled. She was the eye of the storm, calm and deadly. Every shot carried weight, every movement was deliberate, and every heartbeat sensed with the rhythm of the battlefield. The insurgents attempted to regroup, frustrated by mounting losses. Emily observed a group attempting to set up an RPG near the far ridge, aiming toward the Rangers' position. Time was critical. A single rocket could decimate her team. Emily calculated the trajectory, adjusted for wind, and fired. The RPG operator was eliminated instantly. The remaining insurgents paused, realizing the valley had become a lethal trap for anyone exposed. Emily's precision and foresight had shifted the psychological balance of the battle. The enemy was no longer advancing with confidence. They were cautious, wary, and fearful of the unseen sniper above them. Despite the temporary advantage, Emily knew that the fight was far from over. Ammunition was finite, fatigue set in, and the enemy could still regroup or call reinforcements. She adjusted her position slightly, keeping the enemy guessing about her exact location. Every movement had to be calculated. A single misstep could expose her and undo all her efforts. Emily's focus was unwavering, her resolve absolute. She had become the linchpin of the Rangers' survival, the invisible shield against overwhelming odds. The Rangers began advancing cautiously, using Emily's shots as cover. Each movement she facilitated with a single bullet was critical. A sniper's work was not merely about eliminating targets. It was about shaping the battlefield, creating openings, and protecting allies. Emily understood this fully. Her shots were strategic, each one designed to break the enemy's formation, buy time, and protect the Rangers as they maneuvered through the deadly valley. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the valley floor, creating deceptive patterns that could conceal both friend and foe. Emily adjusted for the shifting light, scanning carefully for movement. Her training allowed her to filter distractions and focus only on what mattered, threats to her team. Sweat ran down her brow, dust coated her uniform, and the recoil of the Barrett bruised her shoulder, but she continued, relentless. Time became a blur as the valley became a deadly chessboard, and Emily calculated every move with lethal precision. Hours passed, and Emily's efforts began to change the balance of the battle. The enemy, frustrated by continuous losses and unable to locate her position, slowed their advance and began retreating cautiously. The Rangers, inspired by her precision, began to push forward, reclaiming lost ground. Corporal Jensen's voice crackled over the radio. "Emily, we're moving. Keep them pinned." Emily responded with measured, controlled shots, neutralizing a final insurgent attempting to flank the team. The Rangers' morale surged. Even as the immediate threat diminished, Emily knew that vigilance could not falter. The enemy was adaptive, clever, and determined. She adjusted her scope, maintained overwatch, and continued to calculate every movement in the valley. Each shot, each adjustment, each moment of calm observation contributed to the Rangers' survival. Emily had become more than a sniper. She was the anchor of the team, the invisible force that protected her comrades, and the decisive factor in an increasingly deadly battle. By late afternoon, the tide had turned. The Rangers, exhausted and battered, held the valley with newfound confidence. Emily lowered her rifle briefly to wipe sweat from her brow, scanning the battlefield through the scope one last time. Dozens of enemy combatants had been neutralized, the majority of threats to the team eliminated, and yet the battle was not fully over. She knew reinforcements were hours away, and until they arrived, she would remain the silent guardian of the valley. The impossible odds had been mitigated through skill, focus, and relentless courage. Emily took a deep breath, her hands steady despite fatigue. The valley, once a trap designed to overwhelm and annihilate, now bore witness to her precision, discipline, and unwavering calm under fire. Every shot she had fired had been purposeful, every movement deliberate, and every action calculated to protect her team. The Rangers had survived what seemed like certain death, and it was her eyes, her hands, and her mind that had allowed them to do so. In the heart of the valley, Emily Carter, the sniper perched atop the ridge, was not just observing the battlefield, she was shaping it, commanding it, and protecting it. She had become the unseen force that had turned desperation into survival, chaos into strategy, and overwhelming odds into a fighting chance. And as the sun began to dip toward the horizon, Emily prepared for the next phase of the battle, knowing that her precision, patience, and courage would be tested again before the day was done. By midday, the valley had transformed into a maelstrom of violence. Dust, smoke, and the acrid scent of gunpowder hung in the air, mingling with the metallic tang of blood. The Rangers, though experienced and highly trained, were stretched thin, their movements constrained by the enemy's superior numbers and tactical positioning. Every boulder, ridge, and crag could conceal a hidden sniper or an insurgent preparing to strike. Captain Miller shouted commands, coordinating counterattacks, directing fire, and urging his team to hold ground despite fatigue and injuries. Each second was a battle in itself, each step potentially lethal. Perched atop a jagged ridge, Sergeant Emily Carter's focus was absolute. She had been in position for hours, the weight of her Barrett M82A1 digging into her shoulder, her arms screaming from recoil, yet her mind remained razor-sharp. Every shot she fired was deliberate, precise, and purposeful. The enemy had begun to adapt, sending squads to identify her position, but Emily's camouflage and careful movements kept her hidden. She watched patterns of movement, calculated angles, adjusted for wind, and fired at high-value targets. Each shot shifted the balance slightly, buying her team precious seconds. The first RPG team appeared, attempting to launch a strike at the Rangers below. Emily had no hesitation. Distance, 1,200 meters. Wind, 14 knots. Elevation, 7 degrees. Breath controlled, fingers steady, she fired. The operator fell instantly. Seconds later, another insurgent approached from behind cover, attempting to flank the team. Another bullet from Emily's rifle took him down. Her calculations were flawless, her movements precise. Each shot was a lifeline, each elimination a step closer to survival for her team. Below, the Rangers began to regain momentum. Corporal Jensen, coordinating with Emily, relayed enemy positions continuously. Captain Miller's group moved from cover to cover, reclaiming lost ground, but the enemy was relentless. Another wave emerged, attempting a coordinated push toward the center of the valley. Emily's eyes tracked each insurgent. A sniper crawling across an exposed ridge, a fighter aiming an RPG, another rushing toward a vulnerable flank. One by one, Emily neutralized them with unerring accuracy. Her presence above the battlefield had become the decisive factor in the Rangers' survival. Fatigue began to gnaw at Emily. Her shoulder throbbed from the repeated recoil of the heavy rifle. Sweat stung her eyes, and her muscles burned from hours of constant tension. Yet she could not afford to falter. Each second of hesitation could result in death below. She reminded herself of Montana, the long hours hunting elk and freezing mornings, the patience required to wait for the perfect shot. Every lesson from those days of discipline and focus converged now. Each bullet she fired had a name, a life to protect, a threat to eliminate, a teammate to save. The enemy attempted to regroup, frustrated by their losses. 5 men armed with AK-47s attempted a coordinated advance, moving along a ridge to flank the Rangers. Emily measured their speed, calculated the trajectory, adjusted for wind and bullet drop. Each shot struck its target with surgical precision, halting the flanking maneuver before it could threaten the team. The insurgents hesitated, fearful of the unseen sniper who controlled the battlefield from above. Emily's methodical shooting had not only eliminated threats, but had also instilled fear, breaking the enemy's morale incrementally. Amidst the chaos, Emily noticed a small child near the outer edges of the valley, terrified and frozen. Her heart clenched, a reminder of the human cost of war. She could not stop, not now. Protecting her team was her priority, and each calculated shot allowed the Rangers to move with greater security, shielding the innocent in the process. Every bullet fired was a calculated act of survival, a testament to discipline and courage under fire. She adjusted her position, keeping the child out of harm's way while continuing to engage the enemy. Captain Miller's group was under concentrated fire near a narrow gorge. An insurgent armed with a machine gun was positioned perfectly to cut them off from the retreat path. Emily's scope tracked him, her mind calculating distance, wind, and timing. She exhaled slowly, squeezed the trigger, and the gunner collapsed. Immediately, the Rangers advanced, using the opening Emily created to move toward safer ground. Her presence had become the backbone of their tactical operations, allowing them to maneuver despite being outnumbered and outgunned. As the sun climbed toward its zenith, Emily faced a particularly dangerous squad attempting to advance under cover of smoke. Their strategy was clever, their movements coordinated, yet she anticipated each step. Her barrel cracked again and again, eliminating 3 insurgents before the others could react. Each shot was a careful balance of timing, physics, and instinct. Emily's mind was a machine, processing variables and acting with unerring precision. Her actions were the difference between life and death for the Rangers below. Corporal Jensen shouted over the radio, "Emily, we're almost clear. Just a little further. Keep them pinned." Emily's eyes scanned the valley, noting enemy positions and adjusting her aim accordingly. Another insurgent appeared, moving rapidly toward a vulnerable Ranger. She fired. Another fell. The rhythm of her shots became the heartbeat of survival. The Rangers, inspired by her skill and focus, pushed forward, reclaiming lost territory. Their morale, once fragile under the overwhelming enemy presence, was restored by Emily's precise, protective intervention. Fatigue threatened to overtake her, but Emily's focus never wavered. She reminded herself that she was more than a sniper. She was a protector, a guardian, a lifeline. Every shot she fired had consequences. Every decision could mean the difference between life and death. Sweat stung her eyes. Dust coated her uniform. Her hands trembled from strain. But she remained unmoving, calculating, precise. The battlefield bent to her skill and discipline, a deadly orchestra of precision and courage. By late afternoon, the enemy's momentum had stalled. Emily had eliminated dozens of high-value targets, neutralized RPG threats, and prevented flanking maneuvers that could have destroyed the Rangers. Below, the team was battered but surviving, reclaiming ground, moving under the protection of her unrelenting sniper fire. Captain Miller, grimy and bloodied, signaled to hold position, realizing that Emily had not only protected them, but had fundamentally altered the tactical landscape of the valley. The insurgents attempted to regroup one last time, cautious, hesitant, wary of the unseen sniper, whose bullets had become their nightmare. Emily repositioned slightly, staying hidden, maintaining overwatch, and preparing for the inevitable final push. Her focus was absolute, her skill unbroken. She had transformed from a soldier into a decisive force on the battlefield, controlling the outcome, protecting her team, and shaping the fight with unerring precision. As the shadows lengthened and the heat of the day waned, Emily allowed herself a momentary glance at her team. They were alive. They were moving. They were protected. Every bullet she had fired had been purposeful, every calculation precise, every heartbeat synchronized with the life of the valley. Sergeant Emily Carter had become the difference between survival and annihilation, the silent force ensuring that her team could continue the fight. The battle had peaked. The valley witnessed chaos and precision intertwined, and Emily, atop her ridge, remained vigilant. Her mission was far from over, but she had proven that focus, courage, and skill could turn the tide even against overwhelming odds. Every shot she fired had a name. Every life she protected was a testament to her training, discipline, and unyielding resolve. The valley had learned the meaning of the sniper who watched the wind. The valley had become an inferno of chaos. Smoke from small explosions clung to the jagged rocks and swirling dust, making every movement treacherous and every shadow potentially lethal. Visibility was reduced to mere meters in some areas, and the sound of gunfire reverberated off the cliffs, distorting distance and direction. Below, the Rangers crouched behind boulders and rocky ridges, exhausted and bloodied, their adrenaline keeping them alive but their energy waning. Captain Miller shouted orders, attempting to coordinate movements under overwhelming fire. The enemy, frustrated by earlier losses, had adapted shifting strategies, and their movements were now unpredictable. Perched atop a narrow ridge, Sergeant Emily Carter was the eye of the storm. Her Barrett M82A1 rested against her shoulder, scope trained on the chaotic valley below. Her eyes scanned through the haze, tracking movement through smoke and dust. Each enemy action, each twitch of fabric or flash of metal, was processed in milliseconds. Emily's body ached, her hands burned from hours of holding the heavy rifle steady, but her mind remained razor-sharp. This was the culmination of training, patience, and experience, the moment that defined survival in extreme conditions. The first high-priority target emerged through the smoke, an insurgent squad attempting to regroup behind a rocky outcrop to fire an RPG. Emily adjusted her scope, calculating distance, wind, and bullet drop. Her fingers squeezed the trigger. One shot struck true, and the insurgent fell backward, the rocket launcher clattering uselessly beside him. Seconds later, another insurgent tried to flank the Rangers using the reduced visibility. Emily tracked his movement, adjusting for his speed in the swirling dust. Another precise shot neutralized him before he could fire. Her calm precision contrasted the chaos below, giving the Rangers a lifeline in a seemingly hopeless situation. Captain Miller signaled for his team to advance, taking advantage of the openings Emily created. The Rangers moved cautiously, using smoke and natural cover to inch forward. Corporal Jensen relayed enemy positions with heightened urgency, relying on Emily's sniper fire to suppress threats and protect the team. Every step the Rangers took depended on Emily's ability to predict enemy movements and neutralize threats before they could strike. She had become not just a sniper, but the linchpin of the entire operation. Fatigue gnawed at Emily. Her shoulder throbbed, her eyes stung from the smoke, and her muscles screamed from the constant strain of holding the rifle. Yet she could not stop. Each second of hesitation could cost lives. She reminded herself of her father's lessons in Montana. Patience, observation, and calculation were more powerful than raw strength. Lying prone for hours, waiting for the perfect shot, and reading subtle movements, those lessons now saved the lives of 50 soldiers in a valley of fire. A sudden shift in enemy tactics caught Emily's attention. A squad of insurgents attempted to scale a nearby ridge to gain a higher vantage point and counter her sniper fire. She tracked their movement, recalculated trajectory, wind, and distance, and fired. One by one, the insurgents fell before they could reach advantageous positions. The enemy's morale wavered as they realized they faced a sniper who could eliminate threats with near-perfect precision from impossible distances. Emily's shots were psychological as well as tactical. Fear became her ally, slowing enemy coordination and buying the Rangers more time. The valley's terrain, once an advantage for the enemy, now worked against them. Emily had memorized the ridges, boulders, and choke points, using them to anticipate enemy movement. She repositioned slightly, staying concealed behind jagged rocks while maintaining overwatch of the battlefield. Every step had to be calculated. One misstep could reveal her position and undo hours of protection. Her team depended on her every shot. She adjusted her scope and fired again, neutralizing a machine gunner who had pinned down 2 Rangers near the center of the valley. Captain Miller's team continued to advance, leveraging Emily's cover fire and the disruption she had caused among the enemy ranks. The insurgents, frustrated and confused, attempted sporadic counterattacks, but Emily anticipated each move. Another RPG team, attempted to fire from the far side of the valley. Distance, 1,200 meters. Wind, shifting. She adjusted her scope, held her breath, and fired. The operator fell instantly, saving the Rangers from catastrophic loss. The battle was as much about precision and timing as it was about courage. Emily's skill had turned chaos into calculated defense. Hours passed, and the valley became a lethal chessboard. Smoke continued to swirl, obscuring vision, yet Emily adapted. She tracked targets by movement, glint, and shadow, predicting positions before the enemy could react. Corporal Jensen's voice crackled over the radio, guiding her toward clusters of insurgents attempting to regroup. Emily's shots disrupted their formation, giving the Rangers precious moments to push forward. Every action was deliberate, every movement synchronized. The sniper above the valley had become the team's anchor, the difference between life and death. Even as fatigue and strain pressed down, Emily's mind remained focused. She adjusted for every variable: distance, wind, elevation, and enemy speed. Sweat ran down her brow, dust clung to her uniform, yet she remained immovable. The valley had become a deadly puzzle, each piece calculated with precision. Enemy insurgents faltered under her relentless fire, unable to predict or counter the invisible force controlling the battlefield from above. Her shots bought time, protected lives, and forced the enemy into mistakes. Then came the critical moment. A squad attempted to charge Captain Miller's position directly, using the smoke as cover. Emily tracked each movement carefully. Her fingers squeezed the trigger again and again, bullets striking targets with surgical accuracy. The squad faltered, some taking cover, others neutralized instantly. Below, the Rangers moved forward, reclaiming territory they had lost earlier in the battle. Every shot Emily fired had a purpose. Every target neutralized was a life saved. Her role was not just sniper. It was guardian, strategist, and lifeline all at once. By late afternoon, the enemy had begun to retreat, their coordinated attacks failing under the precise and unrelenting fire of Emily Carter. The Rangers, though exhausted, were regaining momentum, advancing methodically through the valley. Corporal Jensen relayed positions of the few remaining insurgents, and Emily continued her calculated engagement, ensuring that the Rangers were never exposed to unmitigated danger. Her skill, focus, and calm under fire had shifted the balance entirely. Emily allowed herself a brief moment to breathe. She adjusted her position, scanning the valley one last time before the arrival of reinforcements. Her arms ached from the weight of the rifle, her eyes stung from smoke, but her mind remained clear. The impossible had been achieved. The Rangers had survived against overwhelming odds, not by brute force, but by precision, focus, and courage. Emily had become the unseen shield that allowed her team to survive and fight. The valley, once a trap designed to overwhelm the Rangers, had been transformed by Emily's skill. Enemy morale was broken, their movements cautious, and the remaining forces were disorganized. Captain Miller's team regrouped and prepared for extraction, relying on the sniper above to provide final overwatch. Emily's hands shook slightly from fatigue, but her eyes remained sharp. Every shot had counted, every calculation mattered, and every second of focus had saved lives. As the sun dipped lower, shadows lengthened across the valley floor. Emily's job was not finished, but she had ensured that the Rangers could survive long enough to hold their ground and await reinforcements. Her actions over the past hours had proven that a single, highly skilled sniper could change the outcome of a battle, even against overwhelming numbers. She had become legend, not for glory, but for the lives she had saved and the precision with which she fought. The valley, once alive with the chaos of the ambush, now simmered with tense anticipation. The insurgents, battered and cautious, were regrouping for a final push, attempting to overwhelm the Rangers before reinforcements could arrive. Smoke lingered in the air. Dust swirled across the jagged rocks, and every shadow seemed to hide a deadly threat. Captain Miller's team, exhausted and wounded, clung to cover, their energy waning, but their resolve strengthened by the precision and lethal support of Sergeant Emily Carter. Emily perched on her ridge, Barrett M82A1 ready, eyes scanning through the scope. The last waves of enemy combatants were moving strategically, attempting to locate her position. She adjusted her aim, calculating distance, wind, elevation, and movement with practiced precision. Her muscles burned, her hands ached, and sweat stung her eyes, yet she remained unshakable. Every shot counted, every decision was critical, and the lives of the Rangers depended entirely on her skill. Through the haze, she spotted a high-value target, an insurgent commander coordinating the enemy's final assault. The man was flanked by 2 bodyguards, moving with intent to direct fire on Captain Miller's position. Emily's mind raced, calculating the precise angles required for a simultaneous neutralization. 1 bullet for the commander, another for the closest bodyguard, each accounting for bullet drop and wind. Her first shot struck true, taking down the commander instantly. A second shot neutralized the closest bodyguard before he could react. Chaos erupted among the enemy ranks. Captain Miller, seeing the enemy commander eliminated, signaled his team to advance. The Rangers moved forward with cautious determination, using cover and smoke to their advantage. Corporal Jensen relayed enemy positions to Emily in real time, coordinating her shots with the team's movements. Another group of insurgents attempted a flanking maneuver, rushing toward the Rangers' right flank. Emily's scope tracked them, and with calculated precision, she fired. One by one they fell, leaving the remainder hesitant and disorganized. The valley's rocky terrain, once a deadly trap for the Rangers, had become an advantage under Emily's control. She repositioned slightly, staying concealed, and continued to eliminate high-priority threats. Her presence above the battlefield was a psychological weapon as much as a physical one. The enemy, unable to locate her position and fearful of the lethal precision they had witnessed, began to falter. Fear and uncertainty slowed their final push, allowing the Rangers to advance safely. Reinforcements finally arrived in the form of helicopters, their rotors slicing through the smoky air, delivering additional soldiers and suppressing fire. The enemy, already disorganized and demoralized, faced a sudden and overwhelming advantage against them. Emily adjusted her position to provide overwatch for the extraction teams, neutralizing any remaining threats that could endanger her comrades or the incoming reinforcements. Her shots were deliberate, lethal, and perfectly timed. A critical moment emerged when a lone insurgent armed with an RPG attempted to fire upon the extraction point. The rocket could have devastated the landing zone and inflicted catastrophic casualties. Emily calculated the 1,200-meter shot, factoring in elevation, wind, and the insurgents' rapid movement. Her finger squeezed the trigger. The bullet struck perfectly, eliminating the threat just seconds before disaster could strike. Below, the Rangers breathed a collective sigh of relief, recognizing that Emily had once again saved their lives. Captain Miller moved his team toward the extraction point, shouting orders and providing covering fire. The Rangers, though fatigued, were organized and focused, their movements coordinated by Emily's sniper oversight. Corporal Jensen guided her toward clusters of enemy fighters, attempting one final desperate assault. Emily's shots were precise and controlled, neutralizing these last pockets of resistance efficiently. Her actions prevented casualties, allowed the Rangers to maintain order, and ensured that the reinforcements could safely land and extract them. The valley echoed with the sounds of battle slowly fading. Enemy combatants, demoralized and disorganized, attempted retreat. Emily, maintaining her overwatch position, continued to track any lingering threats. One final insurgent, attempting to take advantage of the ranger's focus on extraction, raised his weapon. Emily's trained eye and steady hand took him down instantly. The threat was eliminated. The valley, once a scene of overwhelming danger, was finally under control. The rangers, exhausted, injured, and covered in dust and blood, regrouped at the extraction point. Captain Miller looked toward Emily's ridge, gratitude and respect evident in his eyes. "Carter," he shouted, "we couldn't have made it without you." Emily acknowledged him with a brief nod, her eyes still scanning, her finger never straying far from the trigger. Every life saved, every shot fired, every calculation had led to this moment. Her team had survived against impossible odds. As helicopters began landing, delivering reinforcements, and evacuating the wounded, Emily remained vigilant. She provided overwatch until the last ranger boarded safely, neutralizing any residual threats. The insurgents had been defeated, not just by numbers, but by precision, patience, and the lethal skill of a single sniper who had transformed the battlefield from a deadly trap into a controlled and survivable environment. Captain Miller finally signaled Emily to descend from her ridge. Her body ached from hours of constant engagement. Her eyes stung from smoke and dust, but her focus remained. Slowly she moved down, rifle slung, surveying the battlefield one final time. The valley, once a symbol of chaos and danger, now lay quiet under the late afternoon sun. Every bullet had mattered, every shot had counted, and every life had been saved through precision and courage. The rangers regrouped, offering thanks and relief, recognizing that Emily's presence had been the difference between survival and annihilation. Corporal Jensen clapped her on the shoulder, marveling at her endurance and skill. Captain Miller, still bloodied and exhausted, approached with gratitude. "Sergeant Carter, you didn't just fight for your life. You fought for all of ours," he said. Emily nodded quietly, letting her actions speak louder than words ever could. As the helicopters lifted, carrying the rangers to safety, Emily finally allowed herself a moment to breathe. The valley, a crucible of fire, smoke, and death, had tested her every skill, every nerve, and every instinct. She had faced impossible odds, overwhelming numbers, and extreme environmental conditions, yet she had prevailed. Her precise, calculated actions had saved lives, shifted the battlefield, and ensured the survival of her team. The legend of that day would live on among the rangers. The day when Sergeant Emily Carter, perched atop a ridge, took on 50 enemy combatants and turned the tide with unmatched skill and courage. Every shot had been deliberate, every movement calculated, and every second had counted. In the valley, she was the unseen guardian, the decisive force, and the silent hero whose sniper rifle had ensured survival against overwhelming odds. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the valley in shades of gold and shadow, Emily allowed herself a rare smile. The battle was over, her team was safe, and her skill had made the impossible possible. Sergeant Emily Carter had not just survived the ambush, she had dominated it, protected her comrades, and turned a potential massacre into a hard-won victory. The valley was quiet now. Smoke and dust still clung to the jagged rocks, but the roar of gunfire had faded into a tense silence. The battle that had raged for hours, one that had seemed impossible for the rangers to survive, had come to an end. Sergeant Emily Carter descended from her ridge, each step deliberate, muscles sore, and body fatigued beyond measure. Her uniform was coated with dust, her rifle bore the marks of relentless fire, and her eyes reflected both exhaustion and quiet satisfaction. The battlefield, once a deadly trap, had been transformed by her skill, precision, and unwavering courage. Captain Miller approached, bloodied and worn, his face a mix of relief and admiration. "Sergeant Carter," he said, his voice hoarse, "I don't know how to thank you. We wouldn't have made it without you. Emily nodded, brushing dust from her uniform, her mind still scanning the valley to ensure no threats remained. Words felt inadequate to express what had transpired in those harrowing hours. She had been the unseen shield, the calm in the storm, and the decisive force that had kept her team alive against overwhelming odds. The Rangers began tending to their wounded, applying first aid and helping each other toward the waiting helicopters. Emily moved among them, assisting where she could, checking on their condition, her presence calm and reassuring. The soldiers had faced a nightmare scenario: 50 enemy combatants, tactical advantage against them, and the deadly environment of the valley. Yet, against every expectation, they had survived, largely due to Emily's extraordinary skill as a sniper. Each life saved was a testament to her focus, patience, and courage. Corporal Jensen approached her, wide-eyed, unable to hide his awe. "Emily, you saved us all," he said, his voice trembling. "I've never seen anything like it." Emily allowed herself a small smile, though her mind remained on the precision and timing that had allowed their survival. She remembered each shot, each calculation, and each second when hesitation could have been fatal. The battlefield had tested her every instinct, and she had emerged not only intact but victorious, ensuring the survival of her entire team. As the helicopters lifted off, carrying the Rangers and reinforcements, Emily remained vigilant, watching the valley shrink below her. The enemy had been defeated, their morale shattered, and the remaining combatants scattered or neutralized. The ambush that had once threatened to annihilate Captain Miller's team had been turned into a hard-won victory. Emily's presence had been the difference between life and death. She had transformed chaos into control, uncertainty into precision, and fear into hope. Back at the base, the Rangers regrouped. Medics attended to injuries, while officers debriefed the team. Emily, though exhausted, remained composed. She answered questions with clarity, recounting enemy positions, movements, and tactical decisions. Her observations and actions would later become critical for after-action reports, helping to prevent similar ambushes in the future. Every decision she had made, every shot fired, had been calculated to protect lives and maintain control of the battlefield. Captain Miller formally acknowledged her bravery during the debrief. "Sergeant Carter," he said, addressing the assembled team, "your actions today were nothing short of extraordinary. You faced impossible odds, remained calm under fire, and saved every one of us. You've set the standard for courage and skill in the field." The room erupted in quiet applause, soldiers nodding in respect. Emily, usually reserved, allowed herself a modest acknowledgement. Recognition was rare for snipers, who operated unseen, yet today, her team could not ignore the lifeline she had been in the valley. As the days passed, Emily's actions became the subject of both admiration and reflection. Fellow snipers and soldiers studied her decisions, analyzing the timing, calculations, and focus that had allowed her to dominate the battlefield. For Emily, the true measure of success was the lives saved, the team's survival, and the knowledge that precision and courage could overcome overwhelming odds. She reflected on the lessons of her youth in Montana: patience, observation, and discipline, realizing that they had shaped not only her skill, but her ability to remain calm and focused under extreme pressure. Emily also took time to connect with her team personally. She spoke to the wounded, reassured the shaken, and listened to those who had witnessed her in action. Their stories, their gratitude, and their acknowledgement of her role became a quiet reward. She had not sought recognition, medals, or fame. Her focus had always been on precision, survival, and the well-being of her team. Yet the impact of her actions was undeniable, leaving a lasting impression on everyone who had fought beside her. News of the ambush and the remarkable actions of Sergeant Emily Carter eventually reached broader military circles. Analysts and commanders marveled at her ability, to control a battlefield single-handedly, neutralizing multiple high-value targets and protecting a team against overwhelming numbers. Emily's focus, patience, and discipline had demonstrated the decisive value of a highly skilled sniper in modern combat. Her actions were studied, discussed, and cited as a prime example of tactical expertise, precision under pressure, and unwavering courage. Despite the attention and recognition, Emily remained grounded. She understood the weight of her role, the lives she had saved, and the trust placed in her by Captain Miller and her team. She continued training, mentoring younger snipers, and emphasizing the importance of focus, observation, and patience. The story of the Valley Ambush became more than a tale of survival. It became a lesson in leadership, courage, and the extraordinary impact a single individual could have on the outcome of a battle. In quiet moments, Emily reflected on the valley, the dust, the smoke, the sounds of gunfire, and the faces of her team. Each memory was vivid, each decision significant, each shot a lifeline. She understood the immense responsibility carried by those who take aim in combat, the balance between life and death, and the power of calm precision under pressure. For Emily, the valley was a testament to training, courage, and the extraordinary value of focus in moments of extreme danger. Years later, the story of Sergeant Emily Carter and the ambush in the valley would inspire soldiers, snipers, and ordinary citizens alike. It became a symbol of courage, skill, and determination in the face of impossible odds. Emily's precision, focus, and unwavering commitment to her team had not only ensured survival, but had also demonstrated the profound impact that discipline, patience, and courage could have in moments of crisis. The Rangers who had survived that day carried Emily's legacy with them. They spoke of her calm under fire, her precise calculations, and the unyielding determination that had protected every life in the valley. For them, Emily was more than a sniper. She was a guardian, a silent hero, and a testament to the extraordinary difference one person could make in the most perilous circumstances. And so, the valley, once a deadly trap, became a symbol of resilience, courage, and precision. Sergeant Emily Carter, the sniper who watched the wind and calculated every shot, had faced impossible odds and prevailed. Her team survived, her skills were legendary, and the story of her courage and focus would be remembered for generations. Every bullet had a purpose, every decision mattered, and in the end, Emily had ensured that her comrades lived to tell the tale. The sun set over the valley, painting the rocks in golden light, shadows stretching long across the battlefield. Emily stood silently, her rifle slung, surveying the place where chaos had reigned. She had transformed fear into control, panic into survival, and the impossible into reality. Sergeant Emily Carter, the silent hero, had not just fought a battle. She had rewritten the story of what courage, precision, and calm focus could achieve in the face of overwhelming danger.